The problem is that running a node is hard, right? It's hard. We all experienced it just now. It took us nearly an hour to get a node set up. In reality, it actually can be pretty hard. You know, if we were going to run a production node, we would have to have a lot of like failover infrastructure, and we would have to have a lot better bandwidth and a million other things. So there are some challenges. The ideal, I would say, is that if you want to interact with the blockchain in a trustless way, you should run your own node. Some communities are a lot better about enforcing this than others. Not enforcing, but like promoting and encouraging this than others. So the best example I know is the Monero community, where everybody's always encouraging you run your own node. And when someone asks hard enough, like, is there just an RPC node I can use? They're like, okay, fine. If you want to do it the insecure way, here's an RPC node address. But just know this guy's probably going to lie to you and censor you. Run your own node. Other ecosystems don't have that as such a strong value. Like Ethereum, for example, I think they're getting better, but they also have all this public infrastructure where you can just connect an RPC node for free of money. So the reality is that it takes a lot of disk and memory to run a node. You know, our blockchain's only 100 or a couple hundred blocks long. It's not such a big deal. Those blocks are mostly empty. But a real blockchain network, it takes a little bit of more. It also takes some know-how. Like we all learned a lot from that activity, even me. And another criticism that people have about running their own node is that they don't need it all the time. You know, maybe they check their balance and send some transactions like once a day or once a week. And so there's a lot of overhead of keeping your node online all the time. So while it really is good for you personally and for the network to run your own node, there are also some legitimate criticisms about why you might not want to go to all the effort to run your own full node all the time. So one solution is RPC nodes, aka use someone else's node. But there's problems with RPC nodes. One is that they might spy on you. We learned recently that Infura spies on you. They log at least your IP address and probably a lot more stuff about you. So at minimum, there's a privacy concern. They might also censor you. If you try to send some transaction through Infura, they might not send it. Do they censor Tornado Cash? I don't know either, but I wouldn't be surprised, you know, and just because they don't now doesn't mean they won't in the future. They might also lie to you. They might tell you like, oh yeah, your balance is X, and actually it's not, and you have no way to verify that. And at the end of the day, they really might even steal your girlfriend. These are just really bad people. You don't want to trust RPC nodes, right? That's not the way we want to go. So the alternative, well, the one alternative is run your own node. That's always an option. The alternative to try to make progress against some of those legitimate concerns while also maintaining a little bit more trustlessness and sovereignty is to just lighten the load up a little bit. So imagine you want to run a node from your phone or a microcontroller or maybe even inside of a web browser on a low power like Chromebook or something. These are all pretty resource constrained environments. But it's also realistic because you can imagine like you have some kind of security camera that has a Raspberry Pi in it, and you want it to, the moment that it sees some weird activity, you want it to submit a transaction to the chain so that everyone in the world can attest, like, this camera is claiming something weird happened at this exact time. And then if you need to prove it in court, you can. It was attested to globally, and it's part of our shared story in our state machine. Or you can imagine something a little bit more practical. Maybe you just have a phone and you want to, like, tip your Uber driver, and you don't, like, have a server to start an Ethereum node to send some ETH to this guy. Maybe you just want a node to run right here on your resource-constrained mobile phone. And it has even more constraints than the like disk and memory ones I talked about. It's also resource-constrained just in terms of like energy and battery. So we have some like legitimate use cases for wanting to squeeze nodes into like tighter environments than you would like typically be able to fit a full substrate node or like Geth node or Bitcoin node. And so the solution, I guess I didn't actually put it on the slides anywhere, but the solution here is this thing called a light client or a light node. And I'll just tell you some of the things that they do and don't do. I had a slide earlier this week about like the things that a node might do, and I said some nodes do every single one of these jobs. They're like called archive nodes basically, and some nodes do a lot less. So a light client doesn't sync the blockchain. It doesn't even execute the blocks. Of course, it can't execute the blocks if it doesn't sync them. And it might seem like those are pretty core ideas, and in some sense they are, but it does do the core of the core, what I call the backbone of the blockchain. It syncs the headers, the header chain. So if you remember, the headers are actually what has the cryptographic hash linking between them, so it can verify that the chain is actually unbroken and it has the proper hash link. It also checks the consensus rules, so if you have a proof of work chain, it makes sure that the hash is low enough. If you have a proof of authority chain, it makes sure it was signed by the right person or one of the right people. And then also, just a reminder, proof of stake also counts as proof of authority, so it checks that as well. It doesn't maintain state for sure. If it's not even executing the blocks, it can't compute the state in the first place, let alone sync it. And then some light clients will maintain a transaction pool, others won't. And some will maintain like a kind of half transaction pool where they allow their own user to send in transactions and gossip them out to other nodes, but they don't participate in like actively gossiping other people's transactions around the network. And so the basic idea here is that the light client does the minimal viable amount of work necessary to interact safely with the blockchain.